We have, this is our very first session of a 4-day marathon of young people around the world and their allies coming together, who are interested, curious, and already incredibly active, helping to create a digital world that is healthy, inclusive, and responsible. I'm really happy to introduce you to Angela Scott. She is the executive director of Media Girls. We've been a big fan of theirs for a long, long time. I think before even Angela joined. So you guys are in for a real treat to hear what she has to say. And I will turn it over to Angela. And yes, please, in the chat, tell us where you are from. And we will, if you have any technical issues, we will do our best to help you from behind the scenes. Just put it in the chat and we'll help you out. But also in the chat, please tell us where you're from, and we'd love to hear from you. But I will turn it over to Angela now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. Let me just share my screen while everyone is putting in where they're from. I'm calling in from Boston, Massachusetts. So I see we have someone from New York, Croatia, South America, or South Africa, excuse me. This is awesome to see. Washington, DC, not too far from me. Florida, this is great. Well, welcome everyone. Like Julie said, my name is Angela Scott. I'm the executive director of Media Girls. If you're not familiar with our organization, don't worry, I'll be sharing more about it. But we are a Boston-based nonprofit organization, and our mission is to teach girls to be critical social media consumers. So I have a packed 40 minutes or so for us to work through part of our Real Media Girl workshop, which is the workshop that we do with young people, particularly middle school aged girls. And I'm really excited to walk through it with you today. There will be opportunities to use the breakout rooms or the chat functionality. So the more you engage in this workshop, the better. I really want to hear from you. If you have questions along the way, like Julie mentioned, feel free to put them in the chat or in the question and answer portion of the Whova app, and we'll definitely monitor that as we go. But a huge warm welcome, and let's get right into it. So like I said, we are Media Girls. Here's some photos from our programming. We work specifically with Girls Plus in the Boston area. So that means that we serve girls who identify as female, non-binary, genderqueer, trans youth as well. So we very much value inclusivity in our programming and really focus on making sure that our programming is accessible to all girls. So there's just a little bit of a look at some of the young people in our programming. So where I want to start us today, I feel like it's the big elephant in the room, right? The Wall Street Journal article and follow-up articles that have come out about Facebook and its research, its own internal research, knowing that Instagram is harmful to teens and specifically to teen girls. So, you know, I'm sure you've all seen these articles. If you haven't, doing a quick Google search will definitely get you the information that we're talking about here. But I wanted to just share this, you know, bit of current events to really ground us in why we're here and why Media Girls exists, because our, you know, mission is really to help girls be critical social media consumers, right? So as they're on apps like Instagram and TikTok, and Snapchat, really thinking critically about the content they're consuming, because we know, obviously, again, brought up here through these articles, that Instagram can be really harmful to young people, especially around issues of body image and things like that. So, you know, this just brings to light once again why we're all here, why we're all part of, you know, the summit and really working towards, you know, a better, healthy, safer digital world for all of our young people. And really why Media Girls exists and what we're really trying to do and support young people in this way. So the goal of today's workshop, Media Girls, we use 4 outcomes. These are our real outcomes. And so you can read them quickly there to yourself. But so the first one is to recognize unrealistic beauty and body standards and to center self-worth on non-physical characteristics. So that's going to start us off with a fun activity. The second one is to evaluate the social pressures that come with social media culture and its effect on mental health. So we have sometimes young people in our program that aren't necessarily on social media, but they experience the culture of social media through, different trends that are happening, or challenges that might come out of TikTok, for example, that they witness at their school or in their community, and don't necessarily have to have social media to really understand that these are influencing their day-to-day. The third one is assessing behavior and ability to self-regulate relationships with social media. So this is where we'll talk about, I know I saw some people had already asked some great questions within the app on how do you really, create boundaries for yourself, or how do you, when you're consuming these images and it's, affecting your self-worth, what do you do about it? So we'll talk about that. And then lastly, learning how social media was designed by tech companies and how organizations use influencers as tools to sell products. So that really speaks to, the Facebooks and the other big 10 companies and sort of how social media is designed. So we'll talk a little bit about algorithms. We won't go too technical into it, but just getting young people to sort of understand how these applications were designed and sort of how companies, organizations, and some people use them, which ultimately will affect, how they experience them. So that is, those are our 4 main outcomes to set us up today. And everything we do is going to filter back up to these 4. So this is our first activity. I know we have some people off camera, so if you're just listening in, definitely feel free to use the chat function, but I'm going to break us out into breakout rooms. You can still stay off camera if you want to, but I want to break us out to have this conversation in small groups. We're only going to have about 2 minutes in the breakout rooms, but I want you to just take a second and think about describing media's perfect girl. So we use this term in our programming. And before I even give anything away, I want you all to start describing what the media's perfect girl looks like to you. What does she act like? And things like that. So I'm going to quickly break us out into breakout rooms. Again, feel free to use the chat functionality within that, but we'll come back as a big group and sort of share out what we found. So let's see. All right, we have 2 minutes. Here we go. Should just be able to click the join button once those rooms are open. Looks like some are already joining, so great. And if you don't end up joining a room and just want to start brainstorming on your own, feel free to just jot down either on a piece of paper or a note on your phone of what media's perfect girl looks like, acts like to you. The countdown is on, so 30 seconds, we'll join back up into the larger group and we'll share out what folks have come up with. All right. So we should all be back now. Wonderful. All right. So does anyone want to come off mute, and share what their group came up with, or you can write it in the chat. I would love to see some answers, so we can start populating the screen. Got it. I see Cleo put in the chat, media pictures girls as innocent or evil. So sort of those personality traits, and beautiful. What else do we have?
I can say a few words if you want to. I mean, we got a little bit confused in the beginning, but we came up with a few adjectives and descriptions. Basically, it's definitely something like thin, beautiful, sexy, charismatic. And if you're smart, you're not supposed to show it all too much. That's what we have noticed, basically, most of it.
Yeah, that sounds like you guys had a great discussion. Sorry for the confusion if you had any, but yes, you had mentioned thin. So talking about body types, right? Thin
Yes,
seems
definitely.
to be the ideal. Skinny, right? Beautiful, you said charismatic. So they have, you know, a great personality. They're very likable. But also, like Cleo mentioned, at the same time, they're innocent. And you had mentioned, you know, even if they're smart, they're not very boastful about it. So there's this contrast, right? In terms of characteristics.
Sorry. My
That's
internet is
okay.
a bit slow, so sometimes I speak ahead of time because it's a little bit late. Anyways, I just wanted to add another thing, and that is like the perfect social media girl adjusts to many different. I don't know how to say it in English because it's not my first language. Something like it adjusts to many people. Like many people like her because her character is likable by many people. Like she's easy to adjust to many people because she might be like a people pleaser, but not in that way. I don't know how to describe it correctly.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing a great job. Yeah, so she sort of like has it all together. She's able to, you know, adapt to different, you know, environments. Her personality, I think that again plays to that. You know, you had mentioned charismatic, so she's likable by, you know, everyone, no matter what sort of instance she's in. Yeah, and I'm seeing some other things in the chat here. Fashionable clothes. So yeah, she's always looks like she's put together, right? Even if she's, you know, sending it, you know, on a Zoom call, or she's out with their friends or taking a photo or sharing it from vacation. She's always put together. She's drinking a smoothie. Yeah. So it's, you know, what is her lifestyle like? What does she eat? What does she, you know, do for activities and things like that? Awesome. These are great answers. So yeah, this is I hope I didn't miss anyone, but I'm going to keep us moving. So this is the first activity we do with girls, and really getting them to think about, you know, what is this ideal that they're shooting for? And it's a lot of the things that you had mentioned. So she's thin, she's beautiful, she has long dark hair, she has light skin, she has perfect skin, so there's no blemishes, she has perfect white teeth, right? She's, you know, doesn't have braces or doesn't have any like yellow tinting or things like that. And, you know, we talk about this in terms of what this means on social media as well. So not only is she beautiful, but she has to be popular in the media, right? So she's the one that's getting all the likes, or, you know, has a bunch of followers, and things like that. So as we continue to go through it, where we really look next is how this perfect girl really shows up on apps that girls are using, like Instagram and TikTok. So if we look at the 12 most followed women on Instagram, here they are. This was polled about 3 months ago, so it could be a little bit off, but let's just take this group. So take a second and look at it. Think about some of the characteristics we had just mentioned. Are you seeing them show up here? And feel free to write in the chat if you're seeing anything different, if you're seeing, you know, similar characteristics to what we mentioned. Does anything stick out to you? Perfectly polished. Yep. Lucia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yeah, so I mean, looking at this group, right, first thing I noticed is that they're all lighter skinned. Even the women of color, like Beyonce, J-Lo, Nicki Minaj, they're all light skinned, whether that's using filtering or not, their skin appears lighter. You see a lot of long, luscious hair, right? So everyone's hair is, you know, accentuated to, you know, be very long and luxurious. Their eyes, exactly. Someone mentioned about their eyes. So very open, big eyes, small nose, big lips. You're seeing sort of the same characteristics, right? And same thing happens. Oop, wrong way. Same thing, here we go. Same thing happens when you look at TikTok. So here's this group. Anything else different about this group? I would, you know, argue not, but feel free to write into the chat. You're seeing, again, mostly all light-skinned women. They're thin or curvaceous. They have those big eyes, small nose, big lips, long hair. We're starting to see a little bit of variation in terms of ethnicity and where some of these women live. So we have folks from India. We also have Jojo Siwa on this list, who's a member of the LGBTQ community, which is great to see that representation on this top list. But overall, you're seeing the same characteristics that we just talked about. So who really gets to be media's perfect girl? Someone that lives really in that intersection of beauty and popularity in the media. So what is this saying to girls? And what is this saying to girls of different races? So again, like we had mentioned, you know, sometimes the beauty aesthetics change between races, but at the same time, there's sort of this white beauty standard that exists and that girls are striving for, which, you know, has obviously its problems to it, right? So what is this really telling girls of color and girls in general? That you should be skinny. First one, the average woman will spend between 17 and 31 years of her life dieting to try to lose weight. Here's an example of, you know, a paid advertisement on Instagram for a flat tummy apple cider vinegar gummy. So I'm sure, you know, people have seen these on Instagram or on their feeds. And someone like this is getting paid to share this content. This is something we point out to our young people that might not fully understand how influencers work and how influencer marketing works. But we'll get to that towards the end. Your appearance should be flawless, right? So we had mentioned filtering. So this is huge. Someone mentioned it in the chat. You know, the biggest thing we really call out for girls and young people and all of us to remember is that Instagram, photo sharing apps, video sharing apps, all of that content can be edited. So whether it's using a Facetune application or a Photoshop or whatever it is, there's the ability to edit photographs and video all on social media. So you're not always seeing what, you know, truly exists. So even in this example, you know, you see the first image on the left, woman's already wearing a lot of makeup. And then on the right, you're seeing also using the Facetune application to then edit the photo even more. So again, we try really hard not to, you know, preach to young people that you can't use filters at all if you're someone that enjoys using them, but really getting you to think about why you're using them. And do you need to use them all the time, or do you just like to use them occasionally, you know, with different filtering, you know, aspects or things like that, but really getting them to think about why you're using them. Lighter skin is more beautiful. So this came up again, which again is not true, but is reinforced on social media. So how often does media, you know, media's perfect girl have darker skin? Look at this example. So this is Snapchat using filters, and their beauty filter causes your skin to be lighter. So even for a beautiful woman of color, if you go, you know, look on the left or look on the right, either of those two filters made her natural skin lighter. So we've got problems, and at Media Girls, our solution is to break up with media's perfect girl. So what does that mean? We're going to do this quick activity, which usually takes a bit longer in our programming, and we call it our pie plate activity. Obviously, we don't have the materials to give you today to decorate a really beautiful pie plate like this. But what I want you to do is just take a second, and you can do this individually. Again, you can use a piece of paper, you can write it down in your phone. And what we do is we ask girls to break their pie plate into 8 different slices. So again, you can just create a list of 8 words. And we want you to really think about the 8 characteristics about yourself that you really love that aren't physical. So they cannot be physical. These are all positive inner qualities that make you you. So here's a list just to get you inspired. And so take a few minutes and just jot these down, and I'll do it with you and monitor the chat while we're doing this, but take about 2 minutes and then we'll come back as a group. I see some great questions coming up in the chat, and I'm just going to leave those towards the end because I think we're going to hit on some of them, but I'll definitely make sure to come back to them. So take about another 60 seconds, and then I would love to hear some of the answers that you all came up with.
Angela, they when you talk, they can't hear you in the chat, in the breakouts. So I believe you
they
can
should be all in the main room right now. Is that, do you see it as breakouts?
Oh, sorry. I thought everybody went to breakout.
Oh, that's okay. Still figuring out all of the Zoom capabilities.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we do understand there are some limitations. If you want Angela to see your questions, it's easy for you to put them just into the Zoom chat. So go to the center of the video and click chat there. But you can also put them in the Whova chat because it stays there forever and you guys can chat with each other, and we're pulling those over as well. So don't panic if your question in chat ended up in the wrong spot.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. All right, so Cleo, you kicked us off, and I would love to see if people wanted to come off mute or wanted to put in the chat there, but I would love to see some of the characteristics that you came up with. So Cleo has kind, compassionate, fun, sassy, fearless. These are great ones. What else do people come up with on their own personal hypothetical pie plate? I put down thoughtful, generous, strong. Those are the first 3 that came to my mind. Awesome. We have approachable, hilarious, empathetic, reassuring, creative. Those are awesome. Academic, funky, trustworthy, empathetic, positive, and patient. I like funky. Caring, funny, sharp. Ellie, I like that one too. We have open-minded, unique, reliable, passionate, positive, courageous, empowered, stubborn, empathetic, goofy, ambitious, compassionate, creative. Wow, I feel like you can even tell as I read this list how much more excited I get when people talk about these characteristics about themselves versus, you know, those physical characteristics. Adventurous, bold, fun, helpful, social, impulsive. Wow, keep them coming. This is awesome. I hope everyone is able to see these in the chat and reads through them. This is a great list. And it's really a really important activity, I think, that we don't do often enough. And we don't often ask young people enough, is to really think about those inner qualities that really make them unique and worthy and special beyond those physical characteristics, especially when we live in a world that is so physical, especially in a digital sense. So thank you for all those who participated. You guys came up with an incredible list. All right, so we need to think critically about media. Again, this is back to our mission, right? Thinking critically about the social media content that we're consuming. So let's look at social media. Here's where we really touch on influencer marketing. So, you know, a fancy buzzword that really means people that are getting paid to share content on their social feeds. And these are, again, usually people that are popular in the media by meaning that they have a lot of followers. And so here's an example of Addison Rae, who I think showed up as number 2 on the top popular influencers on TikTok. And so here she is, you know, with a paid partnership with American Eagle. And so the caption says, "Summer's ending and I've got the blues. hashtag AE partner, hashtag AE jeans. So what we have the girls do is really look at this image and say, what is this image telling us? What is it, trying to convey to us? And so, being mindful of time, we get answers like, she looks effortless, right? She's just hanging out in, either the woods or in a park. But at the same time, her outfit is put together and her hair looks good. And, she's looking at the camera and she has sort of that mysterious look. And so what is this ad trying to sell us, right? It's trying to sell us the American Eagle clothing. And so does this work for you? If you just saw this and didn't know that it was necessarily an ad, how would it make you feel? Would you purchase something like this? These are the types of questions that we're asking. Let's look at another one. Here we go. So this one, post-church snaps are definitely still a thing, right? This week's bestsellers on stories. So again, looking at clothing, you're seeing this woman who looks effortless. She just came from church. Does this make you want to purchase the clothes she's wearing? Is it because you love her lifestyle, or you see her happy? She's carrying a coffee. All of these things. What are these images? What do they provoke in you as you look at them? And so again, calling out to girls in here in the file that she's eligible for commission for this post. So again, being paid to share this. So not necessarily saying that she wouldn't wear this outfit or go to church, but getting girls to think about, okay, she's getting paid for this. So there's some sort of, motivation behind sharing this content. And the same thing on this one. So really, again, getting girls to think about the content they're consuming from these top influencers. I had mentioned at the beginning, we also briefly touched on algorithms. So looking at, here's a good quote: social media algorithms are a way of sorting posts in a user's feed based on relevancy instead of publish time. Social networks prioritize which content a user sees in their feed first by the likelihood that they'll actually want to see it. So I know our big sponsor, The Social Dilemma, they talk a lot about this in their documentary, right? So if you think of it as, someone behind the scenes, looking at your feed, looking at your behavior, the more you engage with content, the more you see it on your feed. So we explain this to girls, and we'll talk about this in terms of, regulating your feed and curating your feed. But the more you engage with certain content, the more it comes on your main feed, either on Instagram or TikTok or things like that. So a bigger concept that takes a little bit more time to get into, but mentioning it here because it's really important for girls to know that the things and content they're seeing on their feeds don't just come there by accident. So we have girls look at their feed. We start to ask questions like, who are you seeing on your feed? What types of content do you see? Who's missing on your feed? That's a great question. So if you're seeing the same type of content, the same type of people, what is that saying, and how do you change that? So social media, this is where we break out, and just for purposes of time today, we're not going to break out and do this into big groups, but I would love quickly if people wanted to throw into the chat some pros and cons of social media. So again, we never try to come from a place with young people of saying, we don't want you on social media, don't use it, it's all bad, because that's just not realistic. This is, part of their day-to-day. And again, like we said, their culture, so they are using it. And our goal is to really get them to think more critically about it and use it in a more positive way that feels good for them. So would love to see if anyone has pros or cons to throw in the chat that they can think of in terms of, their own personal thoughts. Bethany said a pro is connecting with people, family, friends, definitely. I mean, that's why Facebook was created, right? So we would be able to connect with people. Gives us an opportunity to find our people, but again, could diminish face-to-face time. So that could be a con. Annabelle said you can speak up for your community and feel seen. Definitely. So sharing your voice, it's a platform, right? To be able to, share your voice, speak up for issues you care about, helping and developing communication, expressing yourself. I'm glad we're starting with a lot more pros. Usually sometimes this list can start with a lot more cons. So I love the optimism with this group. Staying connected, seeing parts of the world you would otherwise not be able to see. Yeah, so there are a lot of pros. I'm not even going to focus on the cons because you've already created a great list of pros. But like any tool, like any platform, there are obviously pros and cons. And, you know, I think social media gets a really bad rep for the cons, but there's a lot of opportunity for it to be used for good. So love this list. All right, I'm going to get us through this last bit here, and then we're going to hit questions. So again, pros: voice your opinion, make new friends, stay in touch. You can read that list, but you came up with an even better one, I think. Girls have so much power on social media. Really, that's what we see here. Here are some young people using their platforms to speak up and be authentic. So we always try to share examples with young people. Cons: I definitely feel pressure to look perfect on Instagram. When I post, I'm thinking, what will people think about this? Are they going to think I'm pretty? Again, back to sort of, you know, focusing on the physical and really thinking about, you know, how this app really affects girls in a day-to-day. So the last piece we go into in the curriculum, which I won't go through in too much detail here, because I think we have a lot of great questions to talk through, but are the unspoken sort of made up rules that girls follow when posting on social media. So feel free to add any to the chat if you have some, but I'm just going to talk through some of these because I think it's an important exercise not to skip here, but some unspoken rules. So looking at, you know, taking pictures with good lighting. If you take a picture with bad lighting, why would you post that sort of thing? Only post pictures where you look good. So if it's a group photo or, you know, a photo with all your friends, who cares if their eyes are shut? We want to make sure you're posting it, you look good. That's sort of an unspoken rule. The pictures have to be cute and funny and relatable. Thinking back to those influencers that posted, you know, Addison Rae, how was her, you know, demeanor in the photo and her, you know, expression, her personality. Again, sort of that like effortless, cute, fun, relatable. And even more rules. So using filters to get rid of flaws, posing that so you have the perfect curves, making sure everyone in pics looks good. Keep up with your streaks on Snapchat. Selfies are okay, but only every once in a while on Insta. I'm hoping people can relate to these, or at least have seen these or experienced these, whether it's, you know, from a friend or a family member. Looks like in the chat, yeah, a lot of people can relate. And the question is sort of why, right? Because they're unspoken rules. Whoever came up with these, who said, you know, you have to comment and like all of your friends post instantly, or you can only post a posed photo, you know, or you have to add some filtering to get rid of your flaws or any sort of, you know, lines or anything like that on your face. Where did these come from? Who's making these rules, right? It really all comes back to media's perfect girl. So this sort of white, unattainable beauty standard that exists in our society and in our culture that really says you have to have the perfect body. So the photo on the left, real life versus Instagram. I think someone mentioned that in the chat too. There's this difference between, you know, showing what's in your real life and what you end up posting on your Instagram are often very different things. Not to say that's true for everyone, but you know, you really see it in that photo. You're seeing the perfect hair and makeup. So again, with the editing functionality, filtering functionality, making your skin look perfect. Again, all to really strive back to this idea of media's perfect girl. So we encourage girls to come up with new rules that they own and they have, you know, the agency over in terms of their relationship with social media. And they often come up with a lot of great ones, which brings us to sort of our final, you know, note about how we really encourage young people to take power and ownership over their relationship with social media. So once we really sort of talk through what are the things to look out for, what are the things to think critically about, you know, with, you know, imagery and influencers and algorithms and all of those things that sort of make up the social media world, influencers, getting girls to think about these questions and really self-reflect. So, you know, for all of us, let's take a second. First one, are there ways that you self-regulate with social media right now? So speaking honestly to yourself, no one will know these answers. Are you regulating it? You know, are you, you know, do you have limits on how often you use it or when you use it or what apps you're on? You know, one thing we say is that social media doesn't have to be a catch-all solution. So maybe you enjoy Instagram because you like, you know, keeping up to date with friends and seeing photos of them, you know, doing different things in their lives, but maybe TikTok doesn't serve you because you end up being on it for hours on hand, just scrolling through different videos. Or maybe you like TikTok because you can just scroll through different videos. You don't feel that social pressure to, you know, have this boisterous social life, but you just like watching, you know, photos of or videos of animals. We often get that answer. So thinking about that first question, obviously, you know, sets us up for the last three. So what things can you do to spend less time on social media? What could you be doing instead of, you know, scrolling through TikTok and Instagram? Is it, you know, spending time in real life with friends, or reading a book, or, you know, picking up a new hobby, or things like that? Someone put in the chat, closing notifications, also a great one. So you're not triggered to constantly open the app. Maybe you just look at it during that set time, and you're not triggered to open it all the time. Oops, sorry, I was in the chat. Third one, what things can you do in your free time besides scroll through the app, scroll through social media? So we talked through that. And what steps can you take to enjoy the time you do spend on social media more? So again, what are the parts of it that you like? What are the parts of it that make you feel good? Is it, you know, staying connected with friends, being able to share a photo with, you know, your followers that you've decided who they are? So maybe it's going through and doing an audit on your followers and making sure it's all people that you want to stay connected with, you want to share things with. It doesn't, you know, slowly become this large group of people that you don't, you know, you wouldn't text or you wouldn't pick up a phone and call. So we really talked through that with girls, all with the idea of hoping that girls become real media girls, which in our terms are girls that know their true self-worth and they use their social media to be their real self. So that authenticity piece, speak up for what they believe in. So use their authentic voice when they're on social media, not feeling like they have to follow those unwritten rules, right? And then lastly, lift up other girls. So again, using the tool for good, using it in ways that make them feel good, as well as their peers. So my challenge for all of us is to be a real media girl on your social media. And it doesn't matter what age you are. The focus is really, again, having that agency over your relationship with social media, using it in ways that are authentic to you, and really always having that critical thinking lens as you're going through and using the applications and deciding for yourself, you know, what serves you and what makes you feel good and what you can get rid of. That is sort of the solution we feel like is the best case scenario in terms of continuing to navigate this world of social media. So with that, I'm going to try to go through very briefly. I know we have 5 minutes to just hit on some of these questions. And thank you so much for putting them all in one place, Magali. And again, feel free. I think we'll be able to share, you know, my contact information. You can find Media Girls at mediagirls.org. If you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to email us. It's mediagirls@mediagirls.org. And we can definitely get back to you. But so first question I see is, how can girls prevent themselves from facing body image issues when utilizing apps like Instagram and TikTok? So, I mean, I think we started to really talk through some of those strategies from the beginning. So really recognizing these unrealistic beauty and body standards. So, you know, if you're an ally of young people, really, you know, asking these questions and really having these conversations about these unrealistic standards, I think is step one. And then step two, really looking at, you know, again, those self-regulating strategies. So how do you, you know, put into place boundaries for yourself? Maybe it's not following, you know, influencers that are pushing out this content. Maybe it's trying to unfollow influencers that push out this content and really engaging with other content that serves you and that will hopefully start to fit into your algorithms and your, you know, your feed and things like that. So a few different strategies there. Second one, is physical appearance more important than the kind of person you are? As the first impression is always physical, how to deal with that? So obviously, in my opinion, physical appearance is not more important than the kind of person you are. I mean, you saw the incredible list that everyone came up with in terms of those non-physical characteristics. So, you know, I think we saw there how important those non-physical characteristics are. I mean, in reality, you said, you know, like you mentioned, the first impression is always physical, but I think, again, it's sort of doing those exercising and flexing that muscle of knowing that, you know, the physicality of someone or the content you're seeing is obviously, you know, could be the first impression, but really, you know, challenging yourself to dig deeper and look beyond that. I think is, is really important, and it's not always easy to do. We're human, we're very much, visual creatures, but I think continuing to try to remind yourself of that is important, especially on social media. We have, why do girls face biased social media experience with body shaming, mental depression? Yeah, so I mean, the research shows, right, that girls just have a different experience with social media than boys. And so, yeah, I think it all comes back to, sort of this white misogynistic culture that we, have all assimilated to in certain degrees, and sort of drives a lot of content in the media world. And so, yeah, girls experience social media differently, and that's why we focus on girls. Again, with these sort of unrealistic body standards, not to say that boys and men don't experience certain beauty and body standards as well. I think it's just the degree to which they experience it is different. The way they engage with social media is different. We hear that boys at the middle school age are often more using social media as a tool, whether it's with gaming or other things, but they're not using it as much from strictly just a visual tool to share images and things like that. So yeah, it's different. We have, it's all fun and games being social media influencer until any of the cyberbullying harassment happens. How do you deal with, the negative side of that? So yeah, I mean, our organization, we don't specifically speak to more of the safety issues of social media. There are a lot of awesome organizations that do. But this is where, again, I think you have to talk with young people about setting boundaries, whether it's blocking someone, reporting them, unfollowing them. That is obviously one of the cons of social media, is that people can share their voices and oftentimes aren't always used in a positive way. And so setting those own boundaries for yourself, and engaging with the tool in ways that allow you to block that person or report them or whatever it is to provide some more safety, is necessary at points. Are there any differences? I'll take this last one. Are there any differences in how to discuss this topic when talking with a mixed gendered group? Yeah, so I mean, I think, again, like I said, we speak specifically to girls. And I think, since girls and boys experience social media differently, I think when you're talking about it in a mixed gendered group, it's really important to do an activity like the pros con list, or even like the unspoken rules list, and see the differences that come up, and then being able to share those answers with each other. So having them do it separately as a group, and then doing it, or as different groups, and then bringing it back to one group, I think, you can have a rich conversation after, getting them to think about it in different ways, as, we've seen here that they're using it in different ways and experience it differently. You'll have an interesting conversation. I think that will come out of that. So I'm so sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions, but like I said, find us on, on the web, on social media, ping us. Definitely happy to continue the conversation going forward. And thank you all for engaging, in this conversation, whether in the chat or taking yourself off mute. But it was wonderful to spend 45 minutes with you all, and I hope you'll continue to engage in the summit. There are a lot of awesome presentations today and throughout the end of the week into the weekend. So yeah, it was wonderful being with you, and thank you so much.
Angela, thank you very much for you and for all the work that you're doing. We're so grateful for that, and we're so glad you kicked off the U3U Summit. It was a perfect way to do it. And thanks everybody for joining. Stick around. There's so much more to see tonight if you're on the East Coast, or good in the morning if you're in Australia, and the middle of the night if you're in India, like Anshi is. And but please do stick around. We've got some really great events right after this. You can go to the agenda section, and we have two pre-recorded, we're calling them storytellers,